Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Wearing Flip-Flops. This is a special episode and we'll talk about the semiconductor industry as a whole. We'll talk about East, about West, about what happens if a specific country takes over another, what happens to fabs, what failure points there are to the industry, and we'll get into an analysis of the geopolitical aspect of the semiconductor world. And for that, I'm excited to have today with us Roy Cohen.
Hi, Ronan. Nice to be here.
Nice to have you. Very nice to have you. Roy is a lead analyst in Kikar Hashuk Forum. And can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Kikar Hashuk is a forum that I've established 12 years ago for geopolitical analysis, geostrategic analysis, analysis of patents, technology, market, everything concerning about the stock market, surrounding the stock market. And I think before we will start, it will be a very nice and a very good time to put a nice disclaimer to everyone. Whatever you're about to hear now is not a recommendation for nothing. And please be warned that the consequences of doing what is being told in here may result in losses. So
it's just us girls talking. Don't do anything that we're talking here about. It's just nonsense that we'll say in the next hour or so.
Good. Let's start. We are, I think, in the most biggest economy event in the 21st century. We're about to rip off, turn apart the globe in two, for East and West. The
Why?
globe is about to, the reason why is because in a point of time when economies are being too large, they collide between two economy empires, Chinese empire, economy empire, and the US economy empire, colliding to each other. It's like a supernova. It's condense and then explode. And in that explosion, new galaxies are being born. And those two galaxies which will be born will be the East and the West. And it will be a complete separation between the East and the West.
Before diving into, what would happen if and then, but, so
And that is
far,
the why, by the way.
So far, we've been seeing, kind of a collaboration. It was cheaper to develop or, manufacture in the East, and there were kind of a collaboration. So, what's changed?
The major, okay, let's put it like that. The first thing that has been changed is that China passed a point in time when she's not in a need for the US economy to support it. Back in time, when China was a third world country, the Americans went to China in order to reduce the working load, to create a place when they will be able to manufacture everything from shoes all the way to technology cheaper. Doing so, they will be able to sell back in the US everything that has been manufactured in China cheap back in the US, which will create more value for the US dollar, which means
so
people will come to stores rather than to buy shoes in $200, they will be able to buy similar shoes in $20.
We're in that era.
So you give to the people much higher value for the US dollar. And that was a political point of view.
Okay, what changed?
At the moment, because that the entire globe duplicated that model and came to China, A, to manufacture things cheaper, B, to purchase things from China that they can buy back at home, but cheaper. So China become much more expensive. The cost that things will be sold to you in China back in what it used to be. For example, you used to buy an item in $2. Now you will buy the same item for $4, $5, $6.
But is that the reason for East and West to collide?
No. The East and West will come later.
Okay.
Right now, we need to understand the basic what changed. What was the thing? What was the fundamental basics that were changed? And those fundamentals made China to be much more expensive. And at the time, China become very, very rich. And rather than to be able to support American companies by producing things much cheaper, it was able to produce for itself and to compete with an American companies for the same items. The worst thing in this entire story is the IP infringement.
Okay.
The capability of the Chinese to duplicate intellectual property that was brought to China by the Western world, United States, Europe, and manufacture the same exact thing, duplicate, imitation of the original.
You say it's about potential stealing and affecting the economy. Recently, in the past years, there are several cyber groups and some espionage done that could also, may have also affected that. And if you can talk a bit about that, just to understand the ecosystem of what the two entities are trying to do to each other.
The basics which made China become an economy empire by stealing intellectual property from the Western world to China and to be able to produce those items, those technologies, and to sell them back to the Western world, but through Chinese companies which are not related to the Americans or European companies which brought that IP back to China in order to manufacture those things. And the idea that if you will infringe from infringement a company, a Western company, and that Western company will not be able to sue you back in China because it's not a standard democracy, and the courts will always be on the Chinese side. That created a new game with the new rules. Those new rules will change the global economy in such a way that it will come into a point in time when the Western world will not be able to sustain that damage no more. And when it will happen, the Chinese will be in a position that they will be able to completely disconnect themselves from the Western economy and to build their own so-called Western economy, but an Eastern economy, by bringing Asian countries to form a coalition on their side, and the world will be torn apart into two separated sides, the Western world and the Eastern world in terms of economy.
So you explained why it makes sense for the Eastern side to do whatever they're doing today. Let's touch a bit why it makes sense for the Western part, and maybe talk about also national security things that may force the West to do whatever they are willing to do or need to do.
I think that in the last 8 years, 10 years, the Western world less, but America is now being able to understand the consequences that will lead if China will be able to take over the American national security.
What do you mean?
For example, most of the communication routers, switches that are being sold in the Western world, when you go into a store and you try to buy, like, let's say, a router for your or an access point to your home, is basically most likely will be most of the item that will be sold in any store. Most of them will be Chinese. Some of them will be from Singapore or Taiwan, but most of them will be Chinese companies. And those items, those routers, those switches, those access points basically contain chips from the Chinese semiconductor industries, which are implemented, most of them, with, if not all of them, with backdoors, with the Chinese backdoors. Those routers, eventually, when the time will arrive, will allow the Chinese a complete access to the Western world. So they will be able to project themselves into Western networks and to take over information and to be able to intercept critical information from our phones. And some of the people are working in a very sensitive industries, which have their own smartphones. When they're coming back home, they connected to their own Wi-Fi networks.
It's more than that. It's cars. It's
We will get into the car in a moment. I just want to bring the idea as the simplest way, just to understand how big is the threat. So
there were some allegedly some articles. I think it was in Europe about don't recall if it was Huawei or solar panels that had a kill switch, a transmitter within the solar panel that could disable the electricity by getting a signal. Again, there were some articles about that. I'm not sure. I haven't dug deep into that, but what I'm seeing and hearing, for example, is that you can't use, if you're government, you can't use Chinese phones. Army cannot get into army bases, Chinese cars, and I think it all gets to what you're saying here, just being able to protect whatever you have.
Let's take your example.
Okay.
About the solar panels.
Okay.
And let's combine it with my example, and let's see what's the consequences. So we have a person.
Maybe just a second. We will talk about semiconductor. But
it's all about everything we're talking is basically surrounding the consequences of the semiconductor industry. This is the first of all we analysis the situation itself, and then we will go down to American companies. We will go down all the way to
bottlenecks.
The bottlenecks. Bottlenecks will be a part of it.
Yeah.
Yes, failing points and things like that. But let's go back for that example for a second. So we have a person. That person is working on an American American company, which is working on the solar electricity industry. And this guy is responsible for a very large solar panel field. Okay, now that guy finishes work and come back home. The technology allow him to use his smartphone when he's at home to connect to a remote control or command and control system back on the field, and to see that if there's remote monitor or things like that. Okay, now he's back home, he's away from the work, and he coming back home, and automatically his phone is being connected to the house hotspot or access point, Wi-Fi, and the router itself is from China. Okay, now the China router is being transmitted back and analysis data. And somewhere back at the router home, which is China, is sitting a person, which that person monitors thousands and millions of routers, and an AI is being analysis packets, and it's being pop up with the screen on some agent in China, which he got attention that one of the routers is being connected to a phone which transmit information to a very famous solar company. So now the guy from China, the agent in China, is being penetrated into the router, and from that router is being accessing the same network from the same packets which are flowing from the phone of the person back to the command and control. Now, China doesn't need to hack anything because the person at home is being connected to his work network. They just ride on his connectivity and through his phone via the router, hacking to the network, and they are inside through him to that to the solar company. So now they just do something like that. They open themselves a backdoor. Now when he's disconnected, they figure out how to connect directly, and from that point they're completely in control of is using zero-day attacks or whatever. They will be able to completely attack the companies that guy was working at.
Now a bit of imagination.
No need for imagination, by the way. It's military. It's a complete reality.
Resources, water, everything could be open
through that attack vector.
Yeah.
So, and it's all because of the semiconductor industry. Why? If we will take in consideration that those chips came from China, and there's a firmware on those chips, and inside those chips, there's like an isolated ROM environment with a very small area in the memory that containing a backdoor. And when you will erase the firmware from that Chinese router and load another open source firmware like the DDWRT or something like that, Open WRT or whatever, it will not erase the backdoor in the ROM area memory because it's been assigned in by the manufacturer, and there's no way to disable it. So in that case, what will happen is that even if you will erase the original firmware and put your own open firmware,
it won't help.
It will not help. So it's a hardware implementation.
I think this part is understood, and now we should be able to understand why the interest. So we talked about China and the economy and what they want to do. We touched, the risks to the Western world if they use Chinese equipment. It's kind of a national security thing because whatever you said could be applied to everything from water, electricity.
Correct.
Military.
It was just an example.
Yeah. Okay. So, having said that, we kind of understand
let's talk about
the map.
Before of that, let's talk about the most important security hazard on roads. Okay. Cars, electric cars, Chinese electric cars. Think about it. We have a piece of metal with 4 wheels, a battery, a lithium-ion battery, which can be exploded if you want, completely connected to the internet because that's how the Chinese are being remotely filmed or sending a software update or whatever to the car. And those Chinese cars are capable to auto steering, capable to accelerate, brake,
just stop and make a traffic jam.
Just stop and make traffic jams. And at the D-Day, basically what happened, those cars will just at the middle of the road in the nice scenario will just
stop
at the middle of the road, and you have traffics which you cannot even push the car. So you find yourself in a situation that ambulances emergency car will not be able even to pass. They're stuck at the middle of the cars, the roads.
So I guess I'd like to shelve this for a moment because, at least I understood why this is a hazard that needs to be addressed. And, the first thing that comes to mind, and we said we'll talk a bit about the Taiwan issue and TSMC. So before getting into that, initially, if we look at the high-end nodes, the iPhones, the high-end NVIDIA stuff, the Blackwell and the lead iPhones, H200, all those chips, Amazon, AMD, Qualcomm,
Everybody is manufacturing at TSMC.
Everybody is manufacturing at TSMC. And if we're talking about nodes that are below 5 nanometer, I think more than 90% of the global manufacturing is TSMC. Yes, we have Samsung a bit. Intel.
It's not a bit. It's big.
It's about
but it's
about
not.
8%,
Yeah, but it's not. It's not comparing to TSMC.
Yes, of course. So and we have Intel.
We'll keep it for later.
We'll keep it. What happens if China takes over Taiwan?
3 scenarios, and we need to talk on each and every one of them.
Okay. One of them, by the way, would be that they would not take over?
Yes.
Okay,
so
perfect.
the first one will be if China is taking over Taiwan. The second one will be what will happen if China will not take Taiwan. The third one is if China is taking Taiwan in a non-aggressive way, which means China is surrendering, Taiwan is surrendering, and China is merging Taiwan into China into one country, one land, one country.
So let's keep what happens if China is not taking over Taiwan to the end and talk about the first two first.
I think it will be preferred that we will start with what happened if they do aggressively taking, and then we'll keep it for the last because
exactly.
It will be the most interesting one.
Right.
Okay. So the first one, we're getting up in the morning. It might be at the weekend, and the U.S. is getting up into a sunny morning. They open the TV, and the news shows that at night China has invaded Taiwan completely.
Okay.
Soldiers, tanks are now walking and driving on Taiwan streets.
Drones.
And drones, everyone.
Yeah.
Chinese is being attacking aggressively. I'm talking about aggressively. And it's a mayhem. It's a chaos on the streets.
Okay.
Okay. So in that case, we are in a situation that Taiwan has zero chance to protect itself. Now, there are people who thinking that United States will come over and will support, in that situation, will support Taiwan and will fight China in order to keep the independency of Taiwan as a sovereign country.
We can talk about
that will not happen. The reason why.
So we can talk about another topic that I want to bring into the discussion. On May this year, there was a meeting between Trump and Xi,
yes,
the president of China, and he brought a lot of CEOs with him, and let's see how this blends. Let's see how it blends into this scenario that you started talking about.
So, continue with the scenario. We're in the middle of a war. The Taiwanese are begging for support from the United States, and the question is if the United States will open a world war in order to protect Taiwan against China. And this is a major issue in here. The United States don't have any reason why to fight China for the sovereignty of Taiwan. And the reason why is because, A, if they had any interest to do so, they will recognize Taiwan as a sovereign country. And going against the White House will declare that it's supporting the sovereignty of the Taiwanese government.
Actually,
And
so far, what we're hearing is
and
the
they
other
didn't
way
do
around.
and
Right.
they didn't do that.
Right,
The
okay.
reason why they didn't do that is because they understand that the people in Taiwan are Chinese, and they speaking Chinese, Mandarin, for example, and their culture are back in time are Chinese, and the history is Chinese. So in any way that you see it, they understand that it's China. It will take a year, 2, 5, or maybe tomorrow, but eventually it will belong to China. That will create a situation when, or if, China will invade Taiwan. What will happen is that China will be separate completely and being under embargo from the US government, including the capability to sell US bonds, including the capability to sell technologies
Would that affect
to the Western world.
If we're talking about money, would that affect the debt that the U.S. has with?
The American can basically say that because China has invaded Taiwan at the moment, that debt is being freezed. So America will not return back that debt. The question is, what will happen to the TSMC factories in that situation? Are the Americans will be willing to allow the Chinese to completely take over the TSMC factories, including the blueprints of companies, including
at this
machineries,
point,
including
all
information?
The key chips manufactured in the world, the blueprints are within TSMC. So, if China takes over, they could manufacture
First hour, second hour of the Chinese attack on Taiwan.
Mm-hmm.
What will happen to those factories?
What do you think?
I doubt that the Taiwanese will allow China to take those factories in case that we're talking about the first scenario, which is the aggressive.
Okay.
And in that situation, I believe that those factories will be completely destroyed, not only by the Taiwanese, but also by the Americans. America will not be able to let the Chinese to put their hands on the technologies, the blueprints, the information which served the American companies. And
some people, by the way, are saying, okay, it could happen, but hey, we have TSMC fabs in the US. So, what could go wrong? We'll do anything that we're doing now in the fabs in the US.
What is the
TSMC fabs, right?
What is the definitions of the letter TSMC?
Taiwan.
Semiconductor. So the question is, if there's no Taiwan and it's China, who own the factories in the United States which are named TSMC? There's no homeland.
In that scenario, there's an embargo. So, China would not be able to connect to the US soil TSMC factories.
Correct.
What would happen then?
It will be taken over by the US government and will be tended to another American company, which we'll talk about it later.
Okay.
So if we take in consideration that it was a hostile takeover, China was taking Taiwan by the power of the army. We are entering into a situation that in the event itself, most likely either the Taiwanese will destroy TSMC in order to not put it in the hands of, give it to the hands of the Chinese. And in case that will not happen, the American will initiate a strike either from submarines, sending Tomahawks into those factories, when they will see that there's no chance that the Taiwanese army will be able to defend the island itself. So this is the most aggressive scenario.
Just a second. You're saying that the U.S. would not come and help Taiwan.
The United States will never open a world war against China in order to protect an island, which, from two reasons, that A, she understands it is a Chinese history. It is belong to China, and the people are there are even speaking Chinese. And the second thing is that they have all the reason to protect the national security, the U.S. national security, by creating an embargo on China because she attacked and conquered the Taiwan island. Because if that will happen, no American company or no Western world company will be able to continue to work with the Chinese, either in China or in Taiwan, because Taiwan will now belong to China, and everyone will need to figure out
that's
a different
the
way.
If they're doing an embargo, that's true.
By the way, that's what happened between China and Ukraine. At the moment that Russia and Ukraine. Once Russia has been entering and created a war with Ukraine, at the moment, at the second it was started, the U.S. created an embargo over Russia, and you cannot even transfer money to Russia.
But I'd like to double click again a bit about the interest of the United States to help or not to help Taiwan.
I'm looking for a reason. Oh, everything in our life is a matter of weight against or weight in favor, and I can't figure out reason why United States will open a world war, because it will be a world war if the United States will strike Chinese forces specifically on a Chinese land. It is a world war.
Okay.
So why? What will be the benefit for the United States?
Actually, I would think, the other way around, maybe. And again, this is a speculation, but what we talked at the beginning of our episode, the U.S. may actually want to bring stuff to be manufactured at home. So if
that's the benefit.
Yeah, that's the benefit.
That's the benefit that if China will invade Taiwan.
That's
because
also a reason not to help Taiwan.
If China will invade Taiwan,
war.
If China will invade Taiwan, what will happen is that no companies will be able to American companies or Western companies will not be able to manufacture in Taiwan, because Taiwan is not Taiwan no more. It is China. So in that case, they will have those Americans or European or Western companies will have to find a different place to going into India, and most of them will come back to the US. So basically, allowing China to invade Taiwan will make the U.S. much more money.
In along the way, right? Not immediately. There will be a big crisis.
Yes, of course, but along the way.
Okay, so that was the first option.
The second option is what happens if they will surrender. The Taiwanese will surrender either by agreement or by just raising a white flag. They surrendering, and China is taking over Taiwan, which means no more Taiwan. The Taiwanese flag is lowering down, and China flags is
And TSMC again.
and
is
TSMC is
Chinese.
no more TSMC because there's no Taiwan. It's called China Semiconductor Industry, and most likely the Communist Party will take over the government of Taiwan, and also the TSMC, which is now China Semiconductor, are becoming a Chinese factories, including all the American technology, including all the American blueprints, information, everything.
So what happens in this case?
The United States will not be able to bear it, which means at that moment, if there will be embargo, will not be embargo, I don't know, but I'm most certainly sure that at that moment, the United States has taken in consideration a completely disconnection in terms of homeland security from anything that is being manufactured in Taiwan right now, which means no American companies will be able or will permitted to manufacture in TSMC in Taiwan, which is no more TSMC, because from that second, if the factories will continue to operate, which means ASML machinery are still operated and not bricked, in that case, the United States will create, let's call it a digital embargo, which means, or technology embargo. You are not allowed, an American company will not allowed to manufacture in TSMC in Taiwan. And that create a major event in the United States for the TSMC factories. Why? Because now the ownership of those factories, the TSMC factories in the United States, are being changed the ownership for the Chinese government. So what happened is that we have a Chinese factories for the most sensitive technologies on the planet, the semiconductor industry, back at home in the United States. So in that situation, there will be a local embargo, which means those factories either will be seized or will be forced by the national security, the American national security, to legally give over the ownership of those factories.
And the blueprints that are already there in Taiwan now?
In Taiwan or in the United States?
In Taiwan.
In Taiwan, there's a situation that it's being lost. In the United States, it's a different story. They cannot access because still the workers are being are Americans.
In that scenario, you believe that TSMC will still stand in Taiwan?
No, it will not. The name TSMC may exist.
No, the factory itself.
But
will it be blown up by anyone?
There's also a good chance it will happen. There's also a good chance that will happen. It might be either by the CIA, and we need to take in consideration that CIA is deeply inside the Taiwan island. In case of that situation will happen, and I also can take in consideration that before the Chinese hand will even get into the TSMC factories, if the Taiwanese will not destroy it, there might be a chance that U.S. nuclear submarine will launch a strike attack on those factories in order to prevent before the Chinese will put their hands, before the Chinese will get into it. Yes, the time will tell. But the technology consequences, the financial consequences are the same.
In those two scenarios, either the embargo would not allow any Western
content.
It's the export restrictions and all the stuff that would prevent working with the fab. Or if the fab is not there, so it's not there, it's same result either way. Let's talk about the third
The
scenario.
third we already talked about, but let's now increase it.
Yeah.
What will happen on the other side of the globe? What will happen with the TSMC factories back in the United States?
No, the third would be that nothing happens. China is not taking over Taiwan.
What we have right now, it's not
Yeah.
a scenario. That's not a scenario. The reason why it's not a scenario because in terms of geopolitical and geostrategy, the Chinese are unable to continue either from the inside, politically from the inside, and global security situation from the outside. The geostrategy is that 100 miles away from the border of the mainland China, there's an island which compromise the security of China. And if the Western world will continue to grow in that island and to bring, for example, firepower, missiles, American missiles and technology, and strengthen the entire military industry over there and the army itself, the Chinese are allowing basically, or theoretically, to a foreigner enemy, which is the Western world, the enemy, to build up a fort in the island itself that...
But, hey, we had a great meeting between Xi Jinping and Trump just recently.
I didn't saw any great meeting.
What did you see?
Okay, so it was... We didn't see any analysis, any logical analysis about something which both of the country declared that make goods for both of the country. If someone is beneficial from a situation, the other one will lose. We didn't see any declaration about something which is for the benefit of the two countries. Now you can view it in a different political point of view, and it will be okay. But I haven't saw a single something that will be good for the benefit of those two.
So why did they have the meeting?
It's good for both the meeting, not what they discussed, and not the situation. The meeting itself, presenting the top of the economy, the United States economy, business personnel and companies are coming to visit China in a delegation, including the U.S. president coming and shake the hand to President Xi, is creating a fake atmosphere to the stock markets in both of the sides that war is not coming. The situation between the United States and China are good, or at least not a problem.
So what you're saying that this was a show?
A completely show.
For the benefit of the stock
show.
market, to just show that everything is...
Trillions has been saved for both parties at the moment. But this is just a postpone for the major event. When there's only a single person on the planet that is now in responsibility for the time that China will invade Taiwan. By the way, Xi itself and all the Communist Party, all the top of the Communist Party, literally saying, Taiwan is belong to China. It can be taken over nicely, or as we say, nicely. So, but in both of the situation, China is completely disclosure their future plan for Taiwan.
When did you get to that conclusion? I think we talked about that offline. It was a couple of years ago, right?
Yes.
What event caused you to say this would happen?
7 days before Russia has been invaded Ukraine, I was writing down that a Russian invasion is on the way in the immediate time. It was 7 days before the event itself. Why did I say it? It's a complete analysis, which if any one of you want to read, you can read it in Kikar Hashuk. It's in Hebrew, but you can translate it if you have the premium. So you can press the button, you can translate it to English or any language. 3 days after the invasion of Russia to Ukraine, I was releasing the second analysis that the next step will be that China will eventually invade. Because of that event, that was the trigger that will allow, or at least will give the confirmation for China to invade Taiwan. And why? None of the countries in Europe and
In the world.
in the world, and neither the United States came over to support and to help. And I'm not talking give weapons or support with money, but literally putting boots on the ground in Ukraine to fight Russia. None. The reason why? The United States didn't want to start a world war against China against Russia, that historically and physically there's no reason why it was that it will not happen again. Ukraine was belong into the Russian.
And then we
the
saw
USSR.
another example when the world just watched US take over Venezuela. And
That
again,
was, but much. The time was much later. But
Yeah.
but let's take a focus for one more second. That was the call sign for China to understand that if the United States didn't start a world war in order to protect, when we're talking about it is in the backyard of NATO, okay, did not start a world war against Russia when Russia has been taking over Ukraine, that was the sign for China to understand that if China will invade Taiwan, there's a very good chance that nothing will happen. So then we had the Venezuela situation. The United States has entered Venezuela and the Chinese had backed off. Why? The Chinese didn't want to start a world war against the United States back at home for the Western world, just in order to protect Venezuela. So it's looked like the world has been given away, which means there's two players, the United States, China, and they just splitting the trophies between them. This one is taking Venezuela, the other one is taking Taiwan, the third one is taking Ukraine, and the world is starting to be ripped off into two separated parts completely. We're talking about geopolitical, we're talking about geostrategy, we're talking about resources, and they just split the trophies between them. And the small countries, which cannot protect themselves, need to choose a side. Are they with or against? Now, the Biden administration was completely supporting Ukraine. And when Trump came, they stopped it, which means they literally say to Russia, go on, take over.
well, the Trump administration has two more years. You know, things may change here or there, but
if we're taking just the last 2 years, what Trump was able to do is just good for the imagination. What another 2 years right now will give him. It's like Even Disneyland is not big enough to sustain his imagination.
So let's go with the two options that you mentioned. With nicely, TSMC would be Chinese. What would that mean now to the Western world and to all the semiconductor giants, companies that so far were manufacturing at TSMC?
Complete checkout.
Okay. What would that mean?
Complete checkout, which mean the United, and that's where taking us to the next phase. The Western world will not be able to work with TSMC in Taiwan because of the situation that they have no awareness when the president, the Chinese president, will decide to take over Taiwan. In that situation,
what's the fallback of the West?
They needed to create an immediate backup plan.
Which is?
Going back home.
Which is?
Who is manufacturing in the United States?
So you probably want to
say...
For
years, they cursed their miserable company.
Actually, I remember, I think it was in 2023, when, Intel was not doing very well.
That's in
understatement, yes.
Understatement.
And then, you were one of the few people, actually, I think you were the only guy who went to Intel management here in Israel.
Yes,
and
they've been summoning me.
Yeah, and lectured them about
how good is their company.
How good is their company?
And what is the future? Their bright future. And they looked at me like an alien from Mars.
Yeah, like what are you having? We should have the same.
Yes. What have you smoked?
Exactly. Okay, so we're talking about Intel, but
what is Intel?
Intel has a fab, but if we look at the history, so Intel was serving mainly themselves historically, and there were two instances along I think it was in the past 10 years, where they tried to open their fabs also to the other companies, and they failed miserably. They just couldn't get to production level, to production service like TSMC did, and in those two times that they try, they failed. So now we're talking about the third trial. What changed?
We need to ask one question before.
Okay.
What is Intel?
What is Intel?
Is it a semiconductor manufacturing facility? Is it a technology company? What is it? The main failure of Intel management itself, and more of that, Intel workers, is to understand what is the place that they are working at. What is Intel? Before everything, Intel is one of the most important national homeland security company for the United States in the planet.
And the reasons, we started the episode by talking about what happens to communication devices and things within data centers that may or may not be hacked or controlled remotely. So, every chip in facility center, army, submarines, nuclear.
One word to describe everything you said in a single word is trust.
Exactly.
Intel is a trusted company by the United States Department of Defense. Now it's Department of War, Department of Defense. It is the only cure, the only vaccination against a global pandemic, which is called China is taking over TSMC.
What about Samsung foundry?
Samsung may find itself in the exact same situation that TSMC is now suffering from China.
You're talking about North Korea.
Exactly the same. It can happen in a second, and only a one person is holding the information when it will happen.
So you're saying,
So what the United States is about to do, shift one problem from one place to another, or finish that saga right now, bringing everyone back home and put all the chips on a single bet, which means everything all in on Intel. By the way, if we take in consideration what happened to the stock just in the last 6 months or less, we see the starting of the understanding of the United States about the importance of Intel to be a national security company. And there's no way back. If China will invade, if China will not invade with power on peaceful, it's a game over. And there is not a single company in the United States which capable to hand in hand fight Intel or make an alternative to Intel in the United States.
but let's look at, what Intel is capable of doing today. And I'm talking about...
Why to look on what Intel is capable to do today and not look about what Intel will be forced
to do. Okay.
To do tomorrow?
I think, it's a question what they can achieve. And the situation may force them into, doing things right. And I think, the new CEO, Li Putan, is making a big change now. He used to be the CEO of Cadence. I used to work at Cadence. I value him a lot. I think he's the right guy in the right place. But if we're talking about, for example, the yield of 18A or even the 2 nanometer, 1.4, the yield is not there yet. It is growing. I did have, a few discussions with leaders in the industry that had to choose where to tape out, whether that should be TSMC or Intel. And the feedback was Intel just cannot provide at this point. When I'll see a line and I'll see production and everything would shine, I'll consider. What do you have to say to that?
I think, okay. I have to take a position as an investor and not as a trader.
What do you mean?
If I was a trader, okay, in the stock market and I'm trading Intel, I need to...
We're not recommending...
Yes, nothing.
We're just discussing us girls.
Yes. You will lose your pants. But if I was a trader, the only thing that was in my mind is that I'm able to understand what you said, that Intel in the immediate time is unable to provide what is being provided, neither in quantities and in technology that it will be, but in quantities to fulfill the gap between what TSMC was able to do, now it's being destroyed or even being conquered, and what is Intel in the United States and Europe are being able to produce. That is what if I was a trader. Therefore, I will not buy the stock because I will understand it will not generate income. And because it will not generate income, therefore, it's not worth to purchase the stock. And that's what happened when Intel was less than 6 months ago, around $19
Yes.
Per share. And I got into Intel, heavily got into Intel.
No recommendation.
No recommendation. You have been warned. Now, what happened? The stock skyrocketed to $120 plus $130 per stock because of what? So people will say it was speculated. And they're right. It was an amazing speculation. Why? Bit by bit, the globe is starting to understand the reason why Trump was take a stake in Intel, and more companies, including, I don't want to disclose their names, have been taking a stake in Intel.
No, it is public because
Yeah, I know, but I just want to make
I think we should talk about this a bit. I mean, who from the companies made contracts with Intel and at this point, and why?
Intel was taking Trump decision to take a stake in Intel was from a geostrategic point of view. He understand what is going to happen to TSMC, and he understand what will happen to those American companies that will come over to manufacture in Taiwan when they have been forced to work with an American companies back in the United States because China has been taking over Taiwan. Now, it will just, for me as an investor and not as a trader, it was one of the best decisions I took, because now my stocks are worth over $120 on Intel. Now, consequences. TSMC is not going to continue to be TSMC eventually. In a point of time, it will belong to either in the position it's now or being destroyed, but the island is going to be under Chinese governance.
You mentioned that, the Intel stock rose, but part of that was because some deals were cut. So, the Terafab with Elon Musk companies, the NVIDIA,
correct.
Apple.
They starting to take a stake in Intel because they understand bad things are coming. Bad times are coming.
You can say also, and again, you can look at the other way around, that's actually good for Intel to collaborate with NVIDIA.
Always.
And maybe
with anyone.
Okay, and maybe Intel now is losing their own GPU market because they're adding NVIDIA into the chip. So, maybe it's an NVIDIA win and not an Intel one.
Intel will have more money, will open more production lines, will have more facilities. They will eventually be able to create their own and others. It's just increasement.
So in your mind, all those deals that were cut,
just making Intel much bigger.
No, but the benefit or why they were cut is because Apple, NVIDIA, Elon Musk all wanted to get in line and get capacity when the time comes to be able to be the first in line.
Before Intel, of that,
okay,
we're getting into an explosion. We're getting into explosion in demand. More and more companies, when time will goes by, and as China is declaring and presenting more aggressive to Taiwan, that will create more aggressive for Intel.
So let's talk about failure points. Let's talk about the single failure point of ASML. All Intel machinery for the fab.
And TSMC, by the way.
And TSMC.
Based on the same point of failures.
Exactly.
If something will happen to ASML, both of the companies are in big trouble.
So let's take a step back and talk a bit about Europe and what's happening in Europe.
It's not like the world doesn't have a sufficient problems. We need to increase the headache and talk about the European continent.
Okay.
They're in a major situation, and from the inside, the Islamic immigration, the fundamental Islamic immigration into the continent, and the situation when each and every country in the EU is being in conflict between each other and between themselves. And the situation when they suffer from a complete disconnection between what is going on in the world and what they want to present to the world. For an example, their agenda, their political agenda, doesn't fit completely with the Americans. They suing the Americans against infringement of laws that they putting under the EU into the EU regulations, and they suing Google and they suing Apple and they suing everyone by not following the European regulations, which mean the European are not able to protect themselves, neither from the Americans and neither from the Chinese. So that lead into a economy situation between the United States and Europe. Put it aside, and let's talk about the changing in the cultural and the political side in Europe. When the fundamental Islamism is getting into Europe and changing the not only the language, when, for example, Muhammad is one of the most famous and the most popular name in Europe, in some countries, rated #1. The Islamization of Europe is not changing only the political and cultural, it's also changing the strategic and the technological and the geostrategic of Europe, between Europe and the world itself. We saw what happened, for example, in France, when streets are on fire. What will happen? Just imagine something. What will happen if one day you will wake up in the morning and stock markets, the head centers, the office, the actual building is put on fire?
Well, there's the police, right?
What police can do that? What the police is going to help for that when the streets are on mayhem?
So what
will
you're saying
happen?
Is that
Banks,
okay,
governments, buildings, so on. What will happen if ASML factory will be put on fire?
But some will say, hey, it's nice thinking that, but this would not happen.
Why it will not happen?
Why it will?
Because we open our eyes without need for any analysis, and we're just seeing what happened to churches.
Crime rate,
rapes,
cities
anything
that police cannot enter.
For example. So we don't even need to imagine what will happen when those problems will get into a critical economy points like ASML factories and the European stock market buildings and banks.
That's exactly a failure point that, Intel would not be able to save the Western world if they would not have ASML machinery.
One of the companies that ASML is built on, the most critical, not most critical, but one of the most critical component in ASML machinery belong to Carl Zeiss. The lenses. What will happen if something will happen to Carl Zeiss, which is not ASML, just a supplier for
two
ASML?
Failure points here.
We have hundreds of points of failures because each machine like ASML is built from hundreds of companies which producing thousands and thousands and thousands of parts which are building the machine itself. And not quite amount of them are being manufactured by European companies.
So what you're saying here is Intel cannot save the world.
Intel is also in a national security situation if something will happen into with ASML, but
Right.
also the we're talking about TSMC, because TSMC is also built on machinery that coming from ASML.
Yeah, but what we talked about so far is if TSMC goes down, Intel should be the savior for the Western world. But if ASML goes down, what would the Western world do?
The only thing that I can say right now, because I won't make a spoiler for the next episode that we're going to have, is that I am aware of a mega event that being evolved in the United States that will completely disconnect the needs for ASML machinery to manufacture chips in the United States by an American company.
So you're saying that in the long term, ASML would not be needed and Intel would be able to manufacture chips
What I
with a different technology.
what I can say is not because I know something that other people just don't want to make a spoiler for the next round, is that the United States national homeland security and national security in general for the semiconductor industry, which is Intel in the United States, is being proposed by a method that will completely disconnect the needs for ASML and Carl Zeiss, for an example, to continue and build machineries for the semiconductor industry in the United States.
Got it. And let's stop now. Leave something for the next episode.
Yes.
So, Ray, thank you very much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to be here.
Same here. And thank you all for watching another episode of Wearing Flip Flops. I guess see you on the next episode. Bye-bye.